What's up, Call of Duty fans? Welcome back. IHOLDSHIFT back with you guys, and like I promised, a little bit later than anticipated, but I had some things come up. It's been a busy week, busy month, really, for me. But we got the full Week 6 recap going on for you, and at the very end of the video, we'll take a look briefly at what the pools are. We'll give some general reactions, but we will be doing more roster mania and pool-specific videos throughout the next couple of weeks. Again, this was the last regular season gameplay up until London, which happens in the beginning of May. So we're going to have a month. Nothing. Just nothing going on besides roster mania stuff. So it's going to be a little bit wild, a little bit crazy, but we'll try to keep the content coming back for you. If it's your first time here, welcome. It's really a pleasure to have you guys. We try to put out the best production quality possible, and hopefully you guys enjoy this the competitive style recap. So let's take a look at what the divisions looked like as we were going into Wednesday. Again, we did just a part 1 and part 2 now recap going through in the divisional standings. And during the crossplay so far in Week 6 is they hadn't really, not a lot of teams had really moved all that much. A couple of movement things happening near the bottom, especially in Division B. But for the most part, everything was pretty much straightforward from where it was left off before Fort Worth to where we are now, even though we haven't really quite finished the week off yet. But again, it's a little bit interesting to see because the Fort Worth stats are not included in these. These are just regular season stats. Fort Worth is a separate tournament, so you see Heretics still up there, United still up there, even though they had pretty terrible showings at Fort Worth. They're still not really affected by their Pro League standings. So again, based on the standings, that's how we determined where the London pools would be. But let's dig in and take a look at the results as we had them, as we take a look back at Monday and Tuesday, some of the results that were there. I fixed that little graphical error with Reciprocity and Enigma 6. Sorry about that, by the way. But let's get down to Wednesday, where things would really start off. And again, after Midnight had beaten 100 Thieves, they would start things off against Enigma 6. And after what I saw from Midnight, granted, I don't really think that 100 Thieves played to their truest potential that day. Their search and destroy was pretty atrocious, but Midnight has not been a very great search team. But the most important thing was the fact that Midnight was able to come back and do a lot of work versus 100 Thieves in the hard points. So I felt really good about Midnight coming into this. They would show that that feeling was very warranted, as they would take a 250-99 start to the series and then finish things off with a close search and destroy. They would not take the control, but they would win out the second hard point as well. So a lot of great things going on for Midnight in the hard point category. For Enigma 6, a lot of concerns and worry, I think, for this team as far as, is this move really going well for them? Chino did play well, but the rest of the team seems to be a little bit struggling in certain instances, and they have to find a way to get better because this has not been a good week for Enigma 6 so far. Then we would go next to Reciprocity and Denial. And Denial, who did a pretty decent job versus OpTic, taking them all the way to round 11 in Game 5. They would not find nearly the same kind of success here versus a very strong Reciprocity team. And I like this Reciprocity team a lot. Yes, that 3-0 versus 100 Thieves back on Monday was kind of scary, as well as the Map 5 game that they had versus Enigma 6 on Tuesday. But this Reciprocity team is very good. It definitely shows of why they were a top 3 team when it came to them being at Fort Worth and why they're still a major contender. They would take care of Denial pretty much no problem. The search and destroy was a little strange, but they were able to handle them no problem on the hard point whatsoever. The 250-49. Denial, I've been saying so much about how I like this team and how they can be so good, but then they come out randomly. They play OpTic very, very close, and then they throw away, they don't even break 50 points against Reciprocity. These things need to change if you're Denial. You need to find a way to really make sure you're playing consistently, because they've been playing all over the board. And then we would get the reprieve of 100 Thieves and Gen G. And this is a really solid matchup that I was really excited to see. And it definitely provided. But after the whole bounce back from 100 Thieves losing to Midnight, I wasn't sure how they're going to handle Gen G. I think Gen G is one of the best teams out there right now. And 100 Thieves would show up and show why they are still a major contender, even though Midnight gave them a little bit of a run for their money. 250-192, the 6-5 search and destroy, which is impressive considering how good Gen G is at search and destroy. And then it would be a 3-0 control, and then a very close 250-240 hardpoint. But the fact that 100 Thieves can take the hardpoint pick that Gen G had up against them and run them all the way there is really, really strong in my mind, and as well of taking them to round 11 of the search and destroy shows that 100 Thieves is very much so for real. OpTic and then Splice would be finishing off, and it would start off very much so in OpTic's favor, and then it would be Splice bouncing back very quickly, and this game would go all the way to 5. And OpTic would just barely be able to sustain, making sure they did not get reverse swept. They would win the last search and destroy 6-3. And after the hard points were relatively close in both directions, the first search and destroy was like, Splice, where are you? And then they were able to battle back pretty nicely in the control, and then obviously the second hard point. But the Splice team, they're good. And it's just, it's hard to really kind of put my finger on what it is that's keeping them from closing out series, because again, they didn't really look all that great versus Gen G the previous day, and then before that they played up against Midnight, and that set was probably a little bit too close for comfort as well. But for Splice, they just need to find a way to keep consistency going in their department. I know I use that word and that phrase a lot, but it kind of just feels like when Temp and Jerd go off, this team is unstoppable, but when Temp and Jerd don't go off, they look a little lackluster, and that's kind of what the case was in the first two maps of this set versus OpTic. For OpTic, you know, you got to be able to close out sets a little bit better than that. They had them on the ropes for the control and weren't quite able to finish it off. So OpTic looked a little shaky. Splice looked a little shakier though, which is, I think, my general takeaway from that set. So we'll go down to Thursday. You have to excuse me. I know, like, I'm stuttering a lot, but I'm still kind of sick dealing with some post-PAX nonsense. Gen G and Enigma 6 would be where we started off Thursday. And again, it's just, yes, Gen G, they did not have the greatest of showings. I don't think they really wanted to go down just the 3-1. Would have loved to have seen that map 5 versus 100 Thieves, but this is still a really solid team, and this matchup would 100% show it, although I am a little bit worried about their control as we've gone through so far. They have not looked super great in control, only winning the one game versus Denial so far this week. They would lose this one here versus Enigma 6 as well, but everything else would be pretty one-sided. So for Gen G, fix the control, make sure you're able to win your hard point, and they should be fine. Midnight versus Denial, the second game up in Midnight. Again, I felt so good about them after how they looked versus Enigma 6, as well as 100 Thieves, but they would not be able to close out versus Denial. They would start off 250 to 235 and then get smoked in the Search and Destroy, and then would turn around and smoke Denial in the control, and at that point, I was like, all right, well, Midnight should be able to close this out, no problem in the hard point. Nope, not gonna happen there. All right, well, fine. Maybe they'll get their choice on their Search and Destroy. Not there either. This Midnight team, they've shown strides, but the fact that they're not able to be consistent over any single game mode is really, really concerning for me. They've looked both good and terrible in the control so far this week, having beat Splice, getting smoked by 100 Thieves, having lost to Enigma 6, and then being able to smoke Denial. It's just, I just don't really know what to make of this team right now. The biggest thing that I can say is that they are making strides in the right direction. They're definitely a competitor now. I would hesitate to say that they're a contender, but they definitely are a competitor, meaning that they can go into any match and compete against whatever teams that are there. But the biggest thing is they need to be able to find that next little step to get over this plateau and this obstacle here of not being very consistent, because they've been all over the place all week. For Denial, you needed this one really badly after that close loss versus OpTic, and then not really finding your stride versus Reciprocity. It was good for them to bounce back and look more consistent. Makes me feel a little bit better about this Denial team, but again, they're still on the lower end of the spectrum for me still. Reciprocity and Splice, this was a rematch from what we had in the Fort Worth third place game. It would be the same, actually almost I think the exact same as how it went during Fort Worth, as Reciprocity would take the first hard point and then not really do much the rest of the time. The Search and Destroy was very one-sided. The control was back and forth. It came down to Splice just winning one extra round. I know that was the most John Madden analysis ever. But then the last hard point, it really did feel like it was Splice's to win, and they just took over near the end of the game. It was a close one, but Splice was too strong. They would win this one 3-1. And then the match that we were all waiting for, OpTic versus 100 Thieves. It started off as a very, very good game. 250 to 235 was the first hard point, and then it was pretty much all 100 Thieves from there. The Search and Destroy not even close, and the control was back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Actually, all those control rounds were relatively quick ones too. But 100 Thieves, they would win the day here at a 3-0 scoreline. It's pretty impressive, and OpTic not quite able to win out the rest of the week would mean that they would not be able to supplant themselves into the second spot in Division A, which is what we're looking at here. Gen G will finish up on top of Division A with the 9-2. Midnight still over the top of OpTic at 7-4 for each of them. And then you've got the 5 and 6s of Red Reserve and Luminosity. And then you have UYU Reciprocity at 4 and 7, and bringing up the rear is Evil Geniuses at 2 and 9. Over in Division B, up top, three-way tie again at 8 and 3, and 100 Thieves will continue to be the team up top on Division B. Heretics just below, and E United below that. The 2 6 and 5s for Splice and Envy, and then you've got the 3 and 8 three-way draw at the bottom, where Enigma 6 would be just above Denial, and then Accelerate. So we'll take a look at what the pools have to look like now as we go through. And these pools, I would say all 4 pools as they pop up will be competitive, but it feels like it's a different difficulty level depending on what pool you're looking at. Pool A, we'll start there first. 100 Thieves, OpTic Gaming, Enigma 6, and Reciprocity. Wow, that's a pretty pretty tight-knit group of teams right there. Again, reciprocity, it feels bad that you're sitting there at 3-8 or whatever they were at. I think they're at 3-8 in total, 4-7, and they're stuck in another hard pool. But that's what happens when you don't play your first divisional stint all that well. And they really didn't, to be honest, didn't really have that great of a week, only going 2-2 in their crossplay. But 100 Thieves in this group with OpTic, a little bit of a rematch that could potentially happen there. You have to feel bad for Enigma 6, who has not really looked all that great since the first days of the pools of Fort Worth. The good news is that they did have a good pool play during Fort Worth, so maybe they can make something happen here. They could very well play a spoiler, but this is going to be a tough pool to get out of, flat out. I think that all 4 teams, again, are competitive. I would say 3 more than the 4th team in this pool. I'm sure you know who I would say. This is a very difficult pool, and you have to feel a little bit bad for everybody else in this group that is Enigma 6. Over in Pool B, Luminosity, Splice, Denial, and Gen G. Same conversation here. You got your Fort Worth champion, you got your 2nd place team, and you've got Gen G, who's looked really strong, and then you've got Denial. So it's going to be another instance here where it's going to be a very competitive pool up top, where Denial, they could potentially play spoiler to a couple of teams, but they need to clean things up badly if they want to have the chance at doing so, simply because of the caliber of teams that are here. I honestly think that if Gen G has the different side of the bracket, they probably finish top 4 at Fort Worth, so they're going to have a chance to really prove themselves here. It's going to be a slobber knocker of a pool. I mean, these are all 3 hard-hitting teams. You would think that Luminosity and Gen G would be the 2 teams up top, but it's hard to say because Splice has had moments where they've looked really great as well. So good luck predicting this pool. Honestly, I don't know how I'm going to try to do it because it's going to be rough. Pool C, things get a little bit easier, but not any less competitive. E United, Team Envy, Evil Geniuses, and Red Reserve. Of course, all the rumors are starting to float around about what's going to happen with Red Reserve. They might not even be Red Reserve by the time London comes around, let alone we know that it's not going to be the same roster that we have here. So it's going to be interesting because E United and Envy, I would say, are in about the same ballpark as far as their skill caliber right now. They're both good, but not great. It comes down to, can E United get their roster move more locked in and get to be the team that everyone expects them to be in the domination category. Team Envy, again, a solid team that just can't seem to finish out and close out sets. And then you've got Evil Geniuses, who look very, very weak, but have improved slightly. And then Red Reserve, who knows what's going to happen there. So this could be a very decisive pool as far as who comes up on top. You might have yourself a pretty favorable spot to shock the winner's bracket here just by getting there. And then you look over at Pool D, you've got Midnight, Heretics, UYU, and Accelerate. And again, a competitive pool, but not for the greatest of reasons. And Midnight, again, a very question mark team that looked better this last week, but still have a lot of issues. Heretics had better cross-divisional play, but looked really pretty terrible at Fort Worth. UYU looked pretty decent at Fort Worth, looked just mediocre when it came to the cross-play. And then Accelerate, kind of the same storyline. All of the 4 of these teams kind of fit in the same ballpark for me. Accelerate still trying to make some moves and try to get themselves a little bit more respectable as far as what they're able to take away from other teams in their category, their skill, kind of their skill gap, I would say. So this pool will be a very big proving point for these teams. It's just very strange that we're seeing Midnight Heritage. Like, it's really strange the way that this pool's played out, honestly. Like, the fact that all of, like, the big top heavy hitters are all in the Pool A, Pool B, and then all of, like, the middle, the lower teams are sitting in Pool C, Pool D is just kind of mind-blowing, the fact that that's the way it went. But it should be interesting to see. Again, when it comes down to trying to make power rankings for all of this, I'm going to try to not take in consideration what the pools look like and just do based off what we already have from cross-divisional and, of course, with Fort Worth and everything before that. But there's a lot of consideration. So this is going to be interesting, is the best way I'll put it. Well, I'll do more specific videos on the pools individually, kind of breaking down the teams and my expectations for them. I also will have a full recap after the CWL. We're now halfway through the season. I'll have a power rankings for that, and then we'll, of course, just before London, we'll do another one to kind of make a gesture at what the moves looked like during the Roster Mania period. I also will be doing Roster Mania videos. I will try to be staying away from rumors and all the speculations and just doing things as I feel them being confirmed or just about set in stone. We've got a long month ahead of us, and I want to make sure that I'm giving you guys information that is actually accurate and not just full of speculation. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment. I'm going to try to reach out to a couple players to get some confirmations so I can be a little bit more in line with like how Lando does his Twitter posts and things like that. But I want to be able to do videos, and I really want to do interviews as well with certain players. So if you've got players in mind that you would love to hear from, let me know, because I'm going to start reaching out to a couple of players and orgs to see if I can get some one-on-one time with some of them just to get more of a take as far as how they feel during the halfway point. So let me know in the comments below what you think. Otherwise, hope you guys like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Until next time, hope you keep holding it down. Later, bye-bye.